We are all born at the same minute, same time, but on different frequencies. So there are 12 parallel Earths, and the upper timelines have easier lives than the lower timelines. Scientists will discover in the future, I'm told, the power of the human verbal voice, that your voice goes out to the cosmos.
Hi, Tom. It's so nice to have you on here.
Thank you for having me.
We're very grateful to have you on the show, and I cannot wait to learn more about what you do.
Let's go for it.
Awesome. So how would you introduce yourself these days, or how would you describe the gentle way?
Okay. I am a telepath these days. I'm also the CEO of the international film and TV program distribution business. So I've sort of come from a business background and I think it's part of showing everybody you don't have to do this 24 hours a day, that you can do this and ask questions in a meditative state at any time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd love to learn more about what you mean by asking questions in a meditative state. Would that be the same thing as channeling, or what is your process?
It's not exactly, because it's been explained to me that everyone can go into a meditative state and ask questions just like I do. That's because everyone has the pineal gland in the back of our heads, and that acts as an antenna for all telepathic thoughts, which are called thought packets, images, gut feelings, many, many different descriptions, channeling. That's all under the heading of telepathy. Scientists just have not figured out yet that the pineal gland has that capability. All they know is that it secretes melatonin, but that's what the pineal gland does, and everyone can use it, and everyone can do exactly what I do.
So walk us through the process a little bit. Do you have sessions for yourself where you sit for maybe a few minutes a day, get into meditation, or how does that work?
I do it a little different. Okay. I'm once a week, I have compiled, and this is just kind of the start of one, a list of questions that that people send to me from all over the world to ask in these meditative sessions. I've asked over 30,000 questions so far. I would never have thought to ask all of the questions that people send to me in emails from all over the world to ask. That's how several of my books came about, such as Atlantis and Lemuria, by people asking me questions about Atlantis and Lemuria. And so it's something that you do a breathing exercise, and that puts you down into a light meditative state. You don't have to become a full trance channel where you step aside. The nice thing about what I do is that I get to ask questions of all sorts of different people and beings and what have you. In one session, I can be asking questions of Jesus, Creator, Theo, my own guardian angel, Gaia, the soul of the earth, octopus soul, or tree soul, or one of the tree souls. So there's every single thing in this universe is ensouled, and you can talk to the souls that ensoul all of these beings at any time you wish. All you have to do is ask to talk to them.
It's Beautiful. Yes, as I know what you mean for sure. I mean, there's some people who believe that maybe objects don't have a soul, but we could probably talk to them as well, which I know I've done in my heart as well.
Yep.
That's
Yes.
beautiful.
And there's still so much to learn. In my book, The Gentle Way with Pets, I had conversations with each one of the souls that ensoul many of the pets that we have. So, as an example, dog soul ensouls every single dog on earth, and cat soul ensouls every single cat that's domesticated or feral. And I said, well, what about tigers and lions and all? Oh, they have other souls that take care of them. We spread the work. It's the way it was described to me.
It's incredible. Have you always had this connection with that inner knowing, or how is it
Oh,
that you feel receive
no,
information?
this was a long process because I never really thought that I could do this. Um, I've always had an interest in it. In fact, I think in my latest newsletter, I had someone was asking about telekinesis, and excuse me, and I remembered a story all the way back when my wife and I got married. We had a party the night before, and so just for the fun of it, several of us put our fingers on a card table, and we were moving that card table all over the room. It was so much fun. It was a great party.
Wow. Now, you mentioned that you receive questions from all over the world. Uh,
Yes,
how did that happen for you? How did you get connected with that many folks? And how do they send in questions? And how can people send in questions to you who are watching this?
sure. I have a website that's www.thegentleWayBook.com. On the front page, there's a little box, and you can just enter your email and name, and it's a free weekly newsletter. It's my gift to the world. I've done over 800, probably 850 of these free newsletters so far. They're all archived on my website. So you can go to articles and news, and there's a little search box if you want to try and see if I've asked something in the past. Then before you ask it again, that way you can find out the answer to many questions.
Now, your newsletter really is a gift to the world. I've read it. I'm a fan, of course. I'm connected to what you do, and you answer all sorts of questions related to extraterrestrials, your experience. What other topics can people expect on the newsletter?
Oh, I mean, there's just almost nothing that we haven't covered, if you can imagine. But I say that, and people keep asking questions that I haven't covered. So, 30,000 questions and going. And so it's, as I say, 99.5% or better of the questions that you'll see in these newsletters came from people emailing me asking these questions. Some people, as you probably noticed in this last newsletter that I sent you, one lady sent me 7 questions. She's turned around already and has another 8 after the next time that I have a chance to ask questions for her. So everybody, it's a good way, but the easiest way is for each of us just to go into this light meditative state. And the easiest thing is just to say, is to mentally say, I'd like to speak to my own guardian angel. And that's how it can start. In my case, I had read an article by Robert Shapiro, who's a columnist for the Sedona Journal, and he was channeling a creator being by the name of Zosh. And I've spoken to Zosh since then, but at that time, he said, you can request benevolent outcomes in your life. And I thought, gee, that's interesting. And so I started tinkering with it, and I started finding that it worked perfectly when I would request these benevolent outcomes out loud. And that's the trick, because scientists will discover in the future, I'm told, the power of the human verbal voice, that your voice goes out to the cosmos. And so when you request benevolent outcomes, this goes out and is heard. So that's how I started, and I discovered it worked perfectly. I had tried the law of attraction, and that didn't really work very well. And so, this worked perfectly. And so I started writing about it, sending a story or two to the Sedona Journal. They printed it. And from there on, I know I've got like over 180 or 90 columns in the Sedona Journal containing stories sent to me every week and month from people from all over the world using benevolent outcomes in their lives that makes them less fearful, more successful, less stressful. It's a great way to live with benevolent outcomes.
Thank you so much for mentioning the MBOs, or most benevolent outcomes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really important for, I feel, so many people, if not everyone, to understand how to do. And your column in the Sedona Journal is really powerful because it shows you how those prayers work, especially speaking them out loud. So
Yes.
thank you for mentioning that. And could you give us an example, perhaps, of an MBO?
Sure. Now, but let me explain first that in requesting an MBO, a most benevolent outcome, is specifically for you. Okay, it goes directly to your guardian angel who handles that. And if the request is within your soul path, okay, then typically you will get that benevolent outcome. Now, it may be that you don't get it right away because maybe you're saying, oh, I request the most benevolent outcome that Johnny, becomes my husband or something like that. Well, and Johnny is not under soul contract. Somebody better is coming along that will be your husband. Okay. So you have to accept and release when you ask these more important benevolent outcomes, like a benevolent outcome for the perfect job, a most benevolent outcome for the perfect home or house for you, and the most benevolent outcome for the perfect mate for you. So these are really important ones. You shouldn't really start with those, because I've had ladies that'll say, email me and say, Tom, it's been a month. I've been requesting benevolent outcome for the perfect man for me, and no one showed up yet. It's not working. You got to give it time. You have to release and understand maybe that person is in another relationship and that has to break off, or maybe you need a relationship before you have the relationship that'll be perfect for you. So there are all sorts of mechanizations that have to go on before you get that perfect mate for you. Now, the other thing is that, keep in mind, MBOs are specifically for you. What I call BPs, I don't want to have to write out the name all the time, are benevolent prayers. Benevolent prayers are what you say for other people, for animals, pets, countries, you name it. Benevolent prayers are handled by a different set of angels. I asked Theo, my guardian angel, and he said, well, there are a little over 1 million of these souls that handle all the prayers on earth. And I said, are they old souls like you? And he said, no. He said, but they're eager. So that's how he describes the souls, which we call angels, that handle prayers.
Wow.
So you say, now I came up with a saying that would be something that anyone of any religious belief could say, because it doesn't name any deity. You can put in a deity if you want to, but you don't have to. So I say, I ask any and all beings to aid and assist the people of Gaza to remain safe and to find food. Thank you. And something like that. That's a benevolent prayer. And I just say thank you at the end.
So we have benevolent prayers and most benevolent outcomes, and you've distinguished the two, which is perfect. Yeah. In your newsletter, you have lots of great examples of that as well, so people can sign up for that and see how that works.
Yes, I try and have 3 or 4 MBO stories every week. Sometimes it's like I'm pleading on Friday night, please send me a story. A lot of people, just have a hard time in writing. And so luckily I have, a couple of people here and there that do like to write and tell stories about their lives, and their stories will be up, 40 or 50 years from now, as long as my website continues after Tom leaves the building. So I'm told that my writings will be mainly for the next generation and the generation after that.
Oh, it's so exciting. And, so the Gentle Way, the title, how did you come up with that? How does it relate to the MBOs, the benevolent prayers? What is the philosophy behind it?
Okay. The first time I got the Gentle Way, excuse me, my wife and I went to a seminar in Sedona put on by Dick Sutphen, Sutphen, Dick Sutphen. And it was on how to, improving your psychic ability. That was the name of it. And so he would put us under 3 or 4 times a day. And by the end of the first day, it was like we'd drunk a whole bottle of wine. We'd be so high from going in and out and up and down, and And so on the second day, he had us. He wanted us to try out automatic writing. Well, at that time, Robert Shapiro had done a couple of readings for me, and in one of the readings was with an Indian shaman in the 1600s by the name of Reveals the Mysteries. And so Reveals the Mysteries, I'd asked, well, is my sole contract to support Robert's work? And he said no. And I thought that was very strange. So a couple of years go by, we go to Sedona for this seminar. And so I decided, well, I'm going to try and contact Reveals the Mysteries, because I wanted to ask him about that. And so when he put us under, I said, Reveals the Mysteries, are you there? And he said, yes, I am, Tom. And I said, wow, this is great. And so he went on to tell me that that I had decided to reincarnate in the 20th and 21st centuries to reintroduce people to the Gentle Way. So I got the name of my first book the very first time I ever communicated with the Indian shaman. He also told me that I was an Indian shaman living at the same time. My name was Stillwater. So so later on, and this is how the the Atlantis and Lemuria book came about, I decided to ask one day, well, Theo, how old is the general way? Because I knew it was 300 or 400 years old, because Reveals the Mysteries had told me that. And so he said, oh, Tom, he said, it dates back about 12,700 years ago when you were inspired to create the general way, and you had 1 million people in the Atlantean times following you. So that's how all the questions for Atlantis and Lemuria began, was with me being informed that I'd had a life back then. Eventually, I was told that I'd had over 165 or 70 lives during Atlantean times and 65 lives on Lemuria. I'd had more lives on those two continents than anybody else alive today. And I said, why so few on Lemuria? I was told, well, for thousands of years, they were a very gentle society, very loving and everything. It was only in the last 1,000 years of their existence that they started warring.
Wow. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. Now I have to ask, you have had experience in this human life as a first lieutenant in the U.S. Army, is that correct?
Yes.
How has that affected you can mention past lives, future lives. How has that affected your balancing out of what we would call karma in this life? How's that relating to your work with humanity today?
Okay. Well, first of all, I've been told that my sole contract in this life did not include going to war. So, way back in the days, we're talking about a long time ago, going through ROTC in order to help pay for my college tuition, they gave us 9 places in the world that we could choose to be stationed. And I chose Europe first, 3 there, 3 in the United States. And then in Asia, I was having trouble on the last one, and they were saying, oh, choose Vietnam. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And so I chose Korea, and I got Korea. And so that's how I wound up avoiding that war, and because I wasn't supposed to. And then also I typically had jobs. They wanted to make sure I would not get enamored with being an officer, and because my last assignment in the Army was teaching ROTC at the University of Oklahoma, and it's a very cushy spot. Typically, it's a 3-year tour, and the colonel was trying to get me to even sign up for another, 2 or 3 months. He was going to make me a captain, and I was already trying to start up my first business in Fort Worth.
Well, I really respect that and what you did. So thank you. Thank you for your service. And
yeah, wish I could have been better, but they made sure that I was given jobs I knew nothing about, like head of the motor pool, or being on top of a missile site in Korea, knowing nothing about electronics, or they just made sure that I would not be enamored with Army life.
Well, that makes sense for the work you're doing now too. And how does that relate to other humans who may need to balance out their lives? Is there a balancing that happens where in one past life or future life, we do one thing, and then maybe in another life we come back and experience the other side of the coin? Do you know how that works for people?
Oh, that's a heady question. Sure. Because everyone has this average of 600 to 800 lives on average during their Earth lives, And I'll add in, and here this has been in a chapter in both my Atlantis and Lemuria book and the First Contact Conversations with an ET book. There are 12 versions of us. We are all born at the same minute, same time, but on different frequencies. So there are 12 parallel Earths, and the upper timelines have easier lives than the lower timelines. So as an example, Vietnam did not happen on the upper timelines. They only happened on the lower timelines. They were able to solve their differences without going to war. So, there and most of our inventions and everything come from the upper timelines, and they filter down to the lower timelines. We're on timeline 6, the middle frequency, and each of our lives we will be on timeline 6. I've been asked that many times, and you have to understand, because we have, we have balancing that we must do. This karma, that, as it's called in the Hindu religion, when we have this balancing, if as an example, timeline 8 would next have a life on Earth on timeline 6, they would have to balance things that we had done on timeline 6 that they didn't happen on timeline 8. So everybody stays on the same timelines throughout all your lives on Earth.
Wow, that explains a lot of things. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
I don't know if I answered all your question or not.
Makes sense to me. I think it feels very correct. And but it's all happening at the same time, right? So
yes, all of our lives are going on at the same time. All of the parallel lives are going on at the same time. Your guardian angel takes care of you in all of your lives on Earth that are taking place at the same time, and all of the 12 yous having those lives on Earth at the same time. So as Theo says, we're pretty busy.
I'm glad you mentioned Theo. So would you be comfortable introducing Theo to us for those who don't know?
Sure. When I first started talking to Theo, I said, "Guardian angel, what name shall I call you?" He said, "Tom." He said, "We're not real big on names over here. And besides, humans don't have the vocal cords to pronounce angelic names. So he said, you can call me Tom, Dick, or Harry, but Tom would be kind of hard in your meditations." So I thought for a couple of weeks, and suddenly the name Theo popped into my mind. And later, much, much later, I was discovered that I've called him Theo in a number of other lives, because I've been doing this type of work for many lives, obviously, in the past. So that's how Theo came. He was the very. Now you have to understand, guardian angel. We call them guardian angels, but they're also called golden light beings. Okay, they are very ancient whole souls. Okay, that raise their vibrational levels the hard way, where, because we're taking part in the Earth experiment, we were promised to fast track this raising of our vibrational levels to the point one day in the future, millions of years, we will meld all of the souls that have taken part in the Earth experiment, will meld together, and we will become a creator, which has never happened in any universe. Pardon me. Thank you. Has never happened in any universe. These golden light beings can take care of us. Okay, are called these golden light beings because they are they glow a golden light, because these whole souls are so very old. And before I get go on. Theo was the very first golden light being. That's what I was forgetting to say, that volunteered for the Earth experiment. And so, and this just came out in either this week's or last week's newsletter, that he had his choice of who he wanted to take care of. And because I had signed up for so many lives, over 1,300 on Earth, I was one of the first souls to have a life on Earth. I was told that, and keep in mind, people ask this, but you can have a life as an animal, okay, as your first, very, very, very first life on Earth, to get used to these 4 negative energies as part of the Earth experiment. After that, it's all human lives. And so my first life, I chose a panther because my very first life was in a jungle. Okay, as a human, I said, well, I better learn how to live in the jungle, so I'll be a panther. Supposedly I didn't last very long, but that's the way it goes.
Can people have a human life first and then an animal after? Does it typically work that way?
I don't think so. I've been told only animals, just to dip your toe in the water, so to speak. That's how it's explained to me.
Wow. Now, have you always been in tune with that side of yourself where you've been able to connect with Theo? Has that been something that you've experienced since you were a child, or is it something that was developed over time?
It was developed, as I say, the first time that I ever communicated was with Reveals the Mysteries, and that was in July of 2005. Okay, and so it just kind of built from there. Before that, obviously, I'd been working on the Gentle Way, and my first Gentle Way book came out in 2006, and it's continued to sell very steadily ever since.
The Gentle Way books are quite profound, as well as the Animal Gentle Way book. And I think that a lot of people can learn from what you've put out. But the Atlantis and the Lemuria book, The Lost Continents Revealed, that's also one that I'm sure a lot of people ask you questions about. So why did you did go over how that came to you, and how that came about? I have to ask, it's on my mind. What caused the final destruction of Atlantis and Lemuria? And I know I have cellular memory, so I want to see if it lines up. I'm just curious.
Okay. Well, first of all, I asked one day, Theo or Guy, I can't remember who I was talking to. Have I ever had a life on Lemuria? Oh, Tom, when he says that, and he said, you helped sink the continent of Lemuria. So it was one of my bad guy lives. As I mentioned, the Lemurians, there were, I think, either 5 or 7 countries on the continent, and Lemuria is about 12% larger than Australia is today. And so Lemuria was divided into countries. I think there were 5 or 7, and they were divided, typically like in Europe, where there's rivers, mountain ranges, that kind of thing. Well, I was in a country on the west side of Lemuria, and we were warring back and forth with 2 other countries on the east side. And so the leader of my country was wanting to bomb them. And I said, oh, yeah, let's do that. They don't have the ability to retaliate. And we're talking about H-type bombs. And so we dropped one or two bombs on those countries, but they did have the ability to retaliate. And before it was over, the whole continent of Lemuria sank into the ocean, and the oceans rose 172 feet, 175 feet, drowning not only all the people on Lemuria, but people all over the world living on the coasts of the world. So that was a biggie. It took me, I think, 85 lives to balance that one terrible life that I did, which I consider my worst life on earth.
Wow. A lot of people that I have spoken to do have cellular memories of Atlantis or Lemuria and the destruction of that. And so I think that The Lost Continents Revealed, Atlantis and Lemuria, your book, is going to be an amazing read for so many people. So, it's just...
And we could say, how did Atlantis, where's Atlantis? Atlantis sat in the Atlantic Ocean on top of the mid-Atlantic ridge, and there were a line of volcanoes right down the center of the continent. And they all blew up at once 31,000 years or so ago. And most of the continent sank, leaving only a few islands scattered here and there. And the oceans of the world rose 162 feet. And then the final act was when Poseidon and Aaron and the five little islands below it got into a war, and the people on Aaron used a Pearl Harbor type attack with 325 aircraft, came and were using lasers to melt the ground, and 1.5 million people died the first day, and then the Poseidons retaliated, and before it was over, all the islands sank, raising the seas 45 feet, and that's when the real story of Noah actually took place, which was 12,500 years ago.
I was just going to ask you about that, about the flood story.
Okay.
It was wonderful that you were able to put that together. Now we would love to have you on for another interview,
Sure.
specifically talking about the Atlantis and Lemuria books at Like Technology Speaks, because I'm sure there are tons of questions that are going to come up with this. So,
Okay.
yes.
Good.
Yeah. We should definitely get more in depth about that. I can foresee more questions coming up about that. And for those of you who aren't quite familiar, then I think that the Atlantis and Lemuria book will be a great place to start. So you can also grab that on Amazon too, as well as the Light Technology Publishing website. So you can start with that. And I do have to talk about your First Contact Conversations with ET book as well, because that is, along with the Gentle Way books, the Animal Gentle Way, Atlantis and Lemuria, and your First Contact book, a lot of people are interested right now about UFOs, or what was the other acronym that they're using now?
UAPs.
UAPs. I mean, why change the name? Why?
Well, because the government wanted to mess it up.
Yeah. So why? I'm sure you get this question all the time. Why do you, in your experience, feel that governments of the world, or certain ones, if not many, are trying to hide the UAPs or the UFOs from humanity?
Well, okay. I'll try and give you a short answer on that, if possible. Besides Antura, and he's my soul buddy. He's part of my soul group, soul cluster. He's amphibian from Sirius B star system, and but there's when he talks to me, there is a Pleiadian. You have to understand, Antura is on a mothership 50 miles above us. There are another 24 or so motherships all around the Earth, all taking part in this Earth experiment, taking millions of readings every day about these four negative energies. And so this Pleiadian monitors the conversations I have with Antura and his three teammates that are known as the First Contact grassroots team. And the Pleiadian has told me that once a month he has meetings with six different countries around the world. All of them think they're the only ones that are meeting with the Pleiadians on back engineering these crashed spacecraft. And it's his job to make sure that nobody gets ahead of the others in their back engineering. They all think they're the only ones.
I mean, why do UFO sightings happen for certain people seemingly and not others? Some people just don't believe
Some
it.
people look up, and some people keep their eyes only on their smartphones.
Easy answer. I love it. It's true.
That's true.
Or if your mind isn't quite open to that, then you're going to think it's something else, or you're just not open to seeing it, right?
Right. And keep in mind, a lot of these drones and spacecraft for the UTs really travel at high speeds. They can take these readings, these millions of readings, in a split second over an area, and nobody sees them. Now, if you really get into this, like, I've got a guy in the UK that acts as my researcher, and he sends me these links to UFO sightings each week.
Wow.
And if you really get into it, you'll see that. And I've been told this by Antura too. We're going to have a lot more sightings. They're trying to get closer and closer for people to video them on their smartphones and all, in order to get us used to the fact that there really are intelligent beings in the rest of the universe. And that's what they're doing right now. Lots, and there are going to be many more. I was trying to convince them to have a big sighting, maybe at this, which is going to be over by the time people see this segment, Contact in the Desert. I said, all those people believe in UFOs. Why don't you have a ship that comes down and acts like the encounters with the fifth kind? That's not.
Oh, it was Close Encounters of the. Was it that? We have to look up the title.
Okay, but anyway, and but have some music and all, and blare and have a big UFO like and on Antura's mothership, they have some ships that they call buses that can take as many as 150 people down for meetings on a world. And so I said, send one of those buses down and let it, flash some lights and have some music, and they'll be filmed and it'll be shown all over the world. And I was told just, this past week that they decided not to, because it's just not quite the right time, that people that would see that would be frightened, and they don't want to frighten people. They consider Earth people fragile beings, is the exact words they use.
Wow.
Because we were so indoctrinated to believe that we were the only intelligent species in the whole universe.
Right. And we don't want to bring about fear, because that's not going to create the correct vibration or alignment.
Right.
So it's best to probably wait until more minds are open or beliefs are there, so that there's no fear involved, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Now I'm just coming out about this myself, but I didn't have a veil when I was born, so I remember what was happening. Kept things to myself for a long time, and uh, my soul family is in a ship up in Earth, but it's not one of the motherships. It's one of the sub ships, and I was one of the only ones that incarnated here. So all the rest of my brothers and sisters and family are up there. So we're all
Mm.
monitoring it. So it's just nice to hear that you're sharing this information because it aligns, and I'm sure that a lot of people watching this will also find that alignment in what you're sharing. So
And keep in mind, in order to take part in the Earth experiment, you had to have reached a certain vibrational level. So maybe they had not reached the vibrational level that you had, and that's why you're able to take part in the Earth experiment.
I
And
did not
you
know
will
that.
and you will take back to them little bits of this negative energy, and it will allow them to start growing again, because the rest of the universe has been stuck at about 5.3, 5.4, and we're at 5.0 right now. But they've been stuck at the same place for millions of years. And when we go to the stars starting around 3250, we will take small parts of this negative energy with us, first to the Federation of Planets, which there are 20,000 of in our quadrant of the galaxy, and they will, and their millions of ships, will spread it across the universe.
My gosh, I thank you so much for sharing that. Now, before we talk about maybe one other thing for the segment here, I
Okay.
do have to ask you because you keep mentioning the four negative energies. Would you be
Mhm.
able to briefly shed some light on what that is for us?
Sure. Okay. Creator of our universe, who Theo tells me would be, and keep in mind, there are trillions of creators created by the creator of creators, and trillions of universes. Okay. So our creator, he says, would be ranked in the top five. And our creator decided uh, to see if the four negative energies that had never been worked with before, all these trillions of universes, including ours, were only created in the 10 positive energies. Our scientists are not even looking for these energies yet. It'll be a number of years. How long, I don't know. But so there are these four negative energies. They're very restrictive energies. So uh, the souls that volunteered for this, our souls, were promised fast track and promised that we could meld one day and everything. And so we, our souls went wholeheartedly in. At the same time, our souls are uh, typically in a soul cluster, there are an average of 6 to 12 fragments of a soul. At the same time, each soul may be having 500,000 to 1 million other lives going on across the universe, learning about the universe to one day take over from Creator. Okay, so Creator created this special space-time continuum that is just for this solar system. It ends at about the Oort belt, and and it's all these negative energies that are very restrictive and hard to live with. And it's it hasn't been easy. We obviously have destroyed ourselves, Lemuria, Atlantis, and so even Creator asked for a soul to come in to Earth to teach unconditional love, which is where Jesus came in to teach unconditional love. And so even like the Antura's mothership on the outside, it's 3 miles wide and 20 stories tall, and it was the ship that did the Phoenix Lights over Phoenix. Okay, and back in the 90s, and uh, so Now that's the outside. On the inside, because it's on the inside is 10 positive energies. They live. The ship is 15 miles wide on 11 decks. So it's a huge ship with a crew of 900 plus their families, totaling 1,500 that live their whole lives on board the spaceship. They're typically from places that where the people lived in tunnels. That's their whole lives were in caverns and things like that.
Wow. Well,
Did
thank
I
you.
explain it enough?
Oh gosh, yeah. No, thank you so much for sharing, and it's amazing. Um, and before we get going here, I just wanted to see if there was any messages that you felt called to share from either yourself, your guides, your soul family, your angels that would be relevant for those watching.
I would encourage everybody to try to request benevolent outcomes in your life. It will make your life so much easier. It was a gift to us. It's learning to use your verbal voice, which is very powerful. And when you're saying nice things to people and requesting these benevolent outcomes and saying benevolent prayers, you will have a much better life. I guarantee it. You can go to my website and look under a blog, and you'll see hundreds and hundreds of stories of people dating back years and years. And in fact, my Gentle Way 3 book, Melody and staff contacted me and said, we'd like to publish these benevolent outcome stories and have them arranged according to home, work, travel, etc. And so that's how they did it. And you can read all sorts of ways to use benevolent outcomes in your life.
Oh, this is wonderful. Thank you so much. So everybody, this is Tom Moore, and I'd love for you to go to thegentlewaybook.com, and you can find out so much more about Tom, his work, and the books. So we have 3 Gentle Way books that you can find on the website, as well as the Gentle Way for animals. It's angelic help for your animal companions, as well as the other 2 books, Atlantis and Lemuria, The Lost Continents Revealed, and First Contact, Conversations with an ET. So really brilliant stuff. Thank you again for joining us. They're so amazing. Really appreciate
And please, everybody, sign up for my free newsletters. I think you'll enjoy those.
Yes, the newsletters are one of your most fantastic gifts to the world, as you were mentioning, and definitely sign up for the free newsletter, as well as the Sedona Journal of Emergence. Tom's column is in the Sedona Journal of Emergence. You can go to thesedonajournal.com, and all of the links will be posted on this post with the video, just in case you miss any of that. So thank you again. I really appreciate your time with us today.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you.